Hello everyone, I'm back with another tutorial. This time I'm doing this 16-inch border lace jackets, baby jackets, or it's in double knitting. This is my own pattern, and if anyone is interested in this pattern, I sell the paper pattern for £2.65 on eBay and Etsy. And there's also a PDF on Etsy for £1. So that's my pattern there. And this is the wool I'm using. I already have it wound up, but I have a ball. This was Wilko, the supermarket that shut down. Or shop, I don't know if it's a supermarket or a shop. But it shut down recently, and this used to be their wool, and it's lovely wool. It's called Wilko Let's Create. This is double knitting, and there is 340 meters in 100 grams. It's all acrylic, and it's for 4mm needles mainly. But I wish I could still get this, because this is perfect for babies, this type of wool. So anyway, I'm using I'm using 3.25mm needles. That's for the bottom part of the pattern. I think I have 6 rows to do in 6 rows. I'll cast on. I'll be using 4mm for the rest after I've done the border part on the bottom, and I've got a little bit of fluff on there. I need 100 stitches, and I'm casting on. I have 96 here, so I have another 4 to do, and I am using the cable cast on method, which is knitting into the back of the whole stitch. 97, 98, 99, that's 100, and I'm going to knit in moss stitch, which is knit 1, purl 1, and then on the next row it'll be purl 1, knit 1. If the next row starts with a knit, you start with a purl, and so on. If one row is a purl, you start with a knit. And I think I'm checking the pattern here, because I have to do a buttonhole, because this pattern has the bands are knitted in on each end, and it is all done in one, the back and the 2 fronts. And I think I have to do a buttonhole on the 4th row, yes. So I'm going to do 3 rows of knit 1, purl 1. And I will be back when I've got those 3 rows knitted. I'll have knit 4 rows. I have wrote down in the pattern to do the buttonhole on the 4th row, but I think it's better done on the 5th row, because you can easily tell whether you're on the right side for doing it, and the number of the stitches, the way I have the stitches written. I think I probably did it on the 5th row, so I'll have to change that on the pattern. So it's knit 1, purl 1, and wrap the wool around the needle. So go over the needle and back again, and purl the next 2 stitches. And that makes your stitch where you knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and then just carry on until you've done 6 rows of the band, the bottom band. So that is the 6 rows of moss stitch, and I made the buttonhole on the 5th row instead of the 4th row. I'm going to have to change that on the pattern. And now I'm changing to 4mm needles, and we're going to knit 2 rows in stocking stitch, 1 row knit and 1 row purl, but we're going to moss stitch the first 4 stitches and the last 4 stitches because they are for the button band and the buttonhole bands. So we're going to moss stitch 4. Oops, that should have been a knit one. Yeah, right. Sorting on the wrong stitch. Knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. And then we are going to knit all the way across to the last 4 stitches, and we're going to moss stitch those 4 stitches. And the next row will be purl, will be exactly the same, will be moss stitch 4, purl across to the last 4 stitches and moss stitch those 4 stitches. I'll be back after I've done that. So that's the 2 rows of stocking stitch with the 4 stitches of moss stitch at each end of the needle. And now we're going to do the first row of the pattern. And the first row of the pattern is doing the moss stitch, 4 stitches moss stitch first. Well, that's 3, 4 stitches moss stitch. And now we are going to, I'm going to have to read the pattern for this because it's a while since I've done this pattern. We have to knit 3. That's 1, 2, 3. It's knit 2 together, wool forward, knit 2, wool forward, slip 1, knit 1, pass slip stitch over, knit 2. So it's knit 2 together, wool forward, knit 2, wool forward, slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over, and knit 2. So we're going to repeat those stitches to the last 4 stitches. So let's knit 2 together, wool forward, knit 2, wool forward, slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over, knit 2. Then again it's knit 2 together, wool forward, knit 2, wool forward, slip 1, knit 1, pass that slip stitch over, knit 2. So I'll do that one more time. Knit 2 together, wool forward, knit 2, wool forward, slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over, and knit 2. And repeat those stitches to the last 4 stitches, and then you are going to do 4 stitches moss stitch. So we followed those stitches in brackets until we have 7 stitches left, and then we are going to knit 3 and then knit the stitches, the last 4 stitches in moss stitch. And the next stitch is just 4 stitches in moss stitch and purl to the last 4 stitches, and those ones will be in moss stitch. So that is the purl row done, and now we're going to do the 3rd row of the pattern, which is starting off with the knit 4, purl 4, moss stitch, and that row is pattern we knit 2, I think it is, yes, knit 2, then it's knit 2 together, wool forward, knit 4, wool forward, slip 1, knit 1, pass that slip stitch over, then knit 2 together, wool forward, knit 4, wool forward, slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over, knit 2 together, wool forward, knit 4, wool forward, slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over, and keep repeating those stitches until you have 6 stitches left on the end of the needle, and I will be back then. Now we're at the last 6 stitches, so we're going to knit 2 and knit the last 4 in moss stitch. And purl 1 row with the 4 moss stitch at the start and the end of each row. So that is how those 4 rows look, like little V's, as you see. And the next 4 rows are exactly the same, but I'm going to show you them on the pattern so you can take a screenshot, and it'll be easier for you to read from the pattern. And I can show you this because it's my own pattern. There is no copyright on it. So you need to do from row 3, 4, 5 and 6. So if you can see where my finger's going down to there, those are the stitches you're going to have to repeat again, the 4 rows. Now where I say is repeat the last 4 rows once more, and then I will come back and show you what to do with the rest. So that is the 4 rows of the pattern done, and now we're going to knit 1 row with the moss stitch at the start and the end of the row, And the next row, which would be a purl row, we are going to moss stitch all the way across. So this row is just moss stitch 4 stitches, and then just knit all the way across. Until you get to the last 4 stitches, and then you do those in moss stitch. So that is the end of the knit row, and the next row is going to be moss stitch all the way across. So you're just carrying on with the moss stitch from your front bands. So it will be purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. We'll just carry on with the moss stitch for that row and another 2 rows. So you'll have done 3 rows of moss stitch. And then the next row, when you come to that, I will show you, there'll be your next buttonhole. So that is all 3 rows of the moss stitch done. And now the start of this row, we are just going to knit stocking stitch with the 4 stitches at the start and 4 stitches at the end in moss stitch. But this first row is a buttonhole row because it's 2 inches from there to there. So we're going to knit 1, purl 1, wrap the wool around the needle and purl 2 stitches together. That is the buttonhole and the 4 stitches. So we're just going to knit and purl the rows with the moss stitch edges until it measures 5 inches, and then I will be back then. I have knitted the whole thing, the back and the 2 fronts, up to 5 inches now, and as you can see I have 1, 2, 3 buttonholes. And now I'm going to divide the stitches for the 2 fronts and the back. So we're going to knit 24 stitches, including the 4 moss stitch at the start. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 23, 24. So that's 24 stitches, including the 4 moss stitches at the start. And then we're going to knit 1 more row, knit 1 more stitch. And now we're going to cast off 4 stitches. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're going to knit 44 stitches. Checking my pattern to make sure I've got it right. So we're going to knit 44 stitches for the back now. That's including that 1 stitch that you had left over from the cast off. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, That's 41, 42, 43, 44. And now we're going to knit one more stitch and cast off another 4 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to knit across. The last of the stitches will be 24, including that stitch on the needle. So the last 4 stitches there, we're going to knit, purl, knit and purl. So that is all the stitches. You see the separating there where we've cast the stitches off. And for anyone who wants to see the written thing, just in case you didn't catch everything I said, divide stitches for the back and fronts. I hold it as steady as I can, and you can maybe take a screenshot of that part, or pause the video if that's what you're doing. That's long enough. So now I'm going to work on the left front first, and I'm going to knit another 3 rows first on the left front, and don't forget about the moss stitch at the start. So we're going to knit 3 rows, just stocking stitch with the moss stitch on the end. And I will be back when I've knit those rows. So that's the 3 rows I've knitted. Now I'm going to do the decrease at the armhole edge. And I'm going to knit 1 stitch, slip 1 stitch, knit the next stitch, and then pass that slip stitch over. And then we're knitting to the end of the last 4 stitches on the needle. And we are at the last 4 stitches, so I'm knitting moss stitch. And that is how we are decreasing. I'm going to knit a purl row, and then the next row will be the same as with the row I've just done. It's on every alternate row until you have 15 stitches left, and I will come back then when I'm down to 15 stitches. So I now have 15 stitches left, and I finished on a right side row. So we're going to knit the 4 moss stitches on the next row, and 3 more of the stocking stitch. 1, 2, 3. Now those stitches we're going to put onto a safety pin for the pick up for the neckband. So I'll pull that stitch up out of the way, and I'm just using a safety pin because it's only a small amount of stitches. So then we're going to just carry on knitting across this row. You'll have to make sure you get your you don't leave your stitch too slack between the pin and the and now we're going to decrease at the neck edge on the next 4 rows. We're going to decrease at the armhole and at the neck edge for 4 rows. Decreasing at the armhole on alternate rows as before, and on every row at the neck edge. So just knit the last 2 stitches together. In the next row, just purl those first 2 stitches together. So that is your 3rd decrease at the neck edge. And the next one. And there's only 2 stitches left, so we only have 2 stitches left, so we're just going to knit those 2 stitches together. Then leave a length, cut the yarn, leave a length to sew the raglan seam. And now we're going to join the yarn to the 44 stitches that's left for the back, and we're going to knit 3 rows, starting with the purl row. So we're going to knit 3 rows across those 44 stitches before we start the decreasing. We are now at the last 3 stitches, so we're going to knit 2 together and knit the last stitch. And that is how the decreasing is done, and it's going to be done on every alternate row. So we're going to purl 1 more row, and then the next row is going to be the same as that row until you have 16 stitches left, and I will be back then. Well, that's the back finished, 16 stitches left, and I'm going to put them onto a stitch holder. And now we need to join the wool for the last 24 stitches for the other front, for the right front, and it also has the buttonholes on that side. So I'm going to knit across these stitches, the 24 stitches, We're going to knit 3 rows, not forgetting the 4 moss stitches at the end of the row. And this next row we're going to decrease at the end of the row, so we're going to knit 2 together and then knit 1. So we're going to knit this row to the last 3 stitches. Knitting the 4 moss stitches at the start of the row. Now we have 3 stitches left, so we're going to knit 2 stitches together and knit the last stitch. And we're going to decrease like that on every alternate row. It's every other row at the end of every knit row until there are 15 stitches left. And now I have 15 stitches, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, and I've made the last buttonhole there just before we put the stitches on the pin. So we're going to knit the 4 moss stitch and 3 from the actual pattern. Two, 3, 4, and then knit 3 from the stocking stitch part. And those stitches are going to go onto a pin. And now we're going to knit across to the last 3 stitches. You'll have to make sure you pull that from that last stitch in tight when you so you don't get a big gap between the pin and the stitches. And now we're going to decrease on the next 4 rows at the neck edge. And also decrease at the armhole edge on alternate rows. But we're doing it on every row at the neck edge, so that's the first one. The second one. This will be the third one. And one more. There we go. Now I'm going to purl those 2 stitches together because there's not enough to do any more decreasing. And that's that piece finished. We're cutting, leaving an end to sew it in. So that is the other front. And that's how it's going to look. You just have, I already have one sleeve done, but I will show how to do the other sleeve, and then the neckband, and then this cardigan will be finished. So we're now onto the sleeves, and I have cast on 25 stitches, but I need 28, so I'm using 3.25mm needles. The wrong way around. And I'll be using 4mm for the body. This is just the 325 for the moss stitch, and we're going to knit 6 rows. After I cast on the other 3 stitches. Oops, I've split that wool there. That's 25, 26, 27, that is 28. Better count those to make sure. 2, 4, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28. So it's 6 rows in moss stitch. Moss stitches, just knit 1, purl 1, and on the next row, if the next row starts with a knit, you start with a purl. If it starts with a purl, you start with a knit. So that's 6 rows in moss stitch I'm doing, and then I'll be changing to 4mm needles. So that's 6 rows of moss stitch, and now I'm going to knit 2 rows stocking stitch, 1 row knit and 1 row purl, and I've changed to 4mm needles. You cannot see that doesn't show up very well, the number on these needles. They seem to wear off after a while as well. So anyway, it's 1 row knit and 1 row purl. Well, that's a 2 row stocking stitch. Now we're going to start the pattern. The first row is knit 3, and then it is knit 2 together, wool forward, knit 2, that's wool forward in front of the needle, and slip 1 stitch, knit 1 stitch, and then pass that slip stitch over the knit stitch, and knit 2, and you're going to repeat those stitches across the row. So it's the 2 together, pull forward, knit 2, pull forward, slip 1 stitch, knit the next stitch, pass that slip stitch over and knit 2, knit 2 together, pull forward, knit 1, 2, sorry, knit 2, pull forward, slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over and knit the last 3 stitches. The next row is just purl all the way across. So you're going to just purl 1, 2, all the way across to the end of the row. That's a purl row knitted. We're going to knit the next pattern row, and it's knit 2 stitches, knit 2 together, pull forward, knit 4 stitches, pull forward, slip 1 stitch, knit the next stitch and pass that slip stitch over the knit stitch. Then you're going to knit 2 together again, pull forward, knit 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches, pull forward, slip 1 stitch, knit the next stitch and pass that slip stitch over, knit 2 stitches together, pull forward, knit the next 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, pull forward, slip 1 stitch, knit the next stitch, pass that slip stitch over and knit the last 2 stitches. And that is how the pattern is looking. And the next row is purl. So we're going to purl all across that row. The next row is just a knit stitch, but we are going to increase at each end of that row, at the start and at the end. So this is how I am increasing. I'm knitting 1 stitch and then I'm going to pick up the bar. You see that? It's like a little bar between the 2 stitches. Put it on your needle. Make sure that the long part of the stitch is at the front and the short part is at the back. And then you're going to knit into the back of that stitch. You will probably have to force the stitch down to get your needle into the back of it. And then we're going to knit to the last stitch and do the same again. As you can see, it's not noticeable. That's the way to do your increases so they're not noticed so much. Especially on something that's going to be a lot of plain knitting all after the little bit pattern. Now we are coming to the last stitch. We're going to do the same as what we did at the start. Pick the bar up between the last 2 stitches, put it on the needle so that the long part of the stitch is at the front and the short part is at the back, and then knit into the back of that stitch. You may have to force it down to get the needle through, but So that's an increase on that stitch. And the next 3 rows are going to be knitted in moss stitch. So you're going to be starting with the knit and purl and knit and purl. Just moss stitch all the way across that row. So that is 1 row of moss stitch, and I can see to start the next row it's a knit stitch, so we're going to purl that stitch. As everyone will probably know, that's how you do moss stitch. Purl that stitch, knit the stitch because that's purl, so we're going to knit that stitch. And so it's just purl 1, knit 1 all the way across. On the 3rd row of moss stitch, the first stitch is purl, so I'm going to knit. And then purl, and then knit, and purl to the end of the row. So that is the last of the pattern rows, and the next row, all the knitting from now on is stocking stitch. Every row, knit rows and purl rows. So we are going to knit this first row, but we're also going to increase 1 stitch at each end. And like I showed you before, pick up the bar between those 2 stitches, make sure the long part is at the front and the short part at the back, and knit into the back of that stitch. You may have to pull the stitch down to get the needle through. And then just knit across to your last stitch and do exactly the same. And you're going to be doing that on this row and then every 6th row after that until you have 38 stitches, and then knit until it measures 5.5 inches up to the armholes, and then I will show you how to do the shaping for the armholes. But for anyone who has trouble keeping track of the pattern, this is what I did for the sleeves. After you change to the 4mm needles, you knit 2 rows in stocking stitch, and there's your next row. You knit 3 and then do all the stitches in the brackets to the last 3 stitches. Then your next row is purl, all purl stitches, and then the next row, again, there's all your stitches in the brackets. And then the next row after that is purl, and then the next row after that is a knit row, and that was the one where you did your first increase, and then you knit 3 rows in moss stitch, and what I've just told you, you are increasing 1 stitch each end of the next and every following 6th row until you have 38 stitches, and then continue till your work measures 5.5 inches. I will hold that long enough for anyone to either take a screenshot or pause your video to knit that part. The sleeve now measures 5.5 inches, and I'm going to do the cast off stitches and then the decreasing. So we're going to cast off 2 stitches at the beginning of the next 2 rows. So 1, 2, knit across that row. Casting off 2 stitches at the start of the next row, which is a purl row. And we're going to purl across this row to the end of the row, and then we're going to knit 2 more rows straight. So that's the 2 rows, casting off the 2 stitches and 2 rows straight after that, knit straight. And now we are going to do the decreasing. Let's knit 1, slip 1, pass a slip stitch over, knit to the last 3 stitches, and we have 3 stitches left, and we're going to knit those 2 stitches together and knit 1, and that is how the decreasing is done. The next row is going to be purl, and then the next row will be decreasing again. So we're going to decrease like what we did on this row on every alternate row until there are 6 stitches left, and we will be putting those stitches onto a stitch holder. So that's both sleeves done and put onto a stitch holder. And now I'm going to pick up the stitches for the neck. I do things like picking up the stitches for the neck and before I stitch the cardigan up, so I have all the pieces here. So I'm going to start with the right front, and I'm going to do the stitch over the moss stitch. I'm going to do the actual stitch that I'm supposed to do for the moss stitch when I pick up the stitches. So we start off with a purl, then a knit, another purl, another knit, and I'm going to carry on picking up the other stitches the same way. So that is the 7 stitches that was on the pin. I'll have to blow that down a little bit, it's too close. And so I'm going to pick up 8 stitches from the neckband up here. It's going to be knit. Now they'll all have to be knit stitches to pick up here. It's 2. So that's 8 stitches for the and so I'm casting going to work out the moss stitch for the top of the sleeves because I can pick them up in moss stitch. Purl, knit, 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 purl. So it's going to be knit 1, knit 1 stitch, purl 1 stitch, knit, purl, and now it will be the stitches for the back. And I finished with a purl, so I'm starting with a knit. And now I'm picking up the stitches from the other sleeve, and I'm going to start with the knit because I ended with a purl on that one. Knit, purl, purl, and now I'm going to pick up, I'm only going to pick up 7 stitches on the other front, so that I end up where the moss stitch is, so I end up with a knit, a purl stitch, a knit stitch where that purl stitch is on the moss stitch. So I'm only going to pick up 7. Otherwise I'll end up with the wrong stitch on the moss stitch. That's 1. 2, 6, 7. Oh, I don't. And now I'm picking up the stitches that were on the pin. I put them onto the needle, and I'm knitting in moss stitch across those stitches, and then the 4 moss stitches. So that is all the stitches picked up, and I have 57 stitches instead of 58. If I'd picked up 8 stitches here, the same as I did on the other side, would have given me 58, but I've only picked up 7. So now I'm going to knit 3 rows in moss stitch for the neck, and then I'll be casting off the stitches, and I'll come back and show you when I cast off the stitches. So that is all 3 moss stitch rows knitted, and now I'm going to cast off those stitches, but I'm going to cast off in moss stitch on the stitch you would have done if you were knitting the row. So that's a knit stitch there, so I'm going to start with a purl. And cast off quite loosely, don't pull the stitches tight when you take them over. And just imagine you're knitting a moss stitch row, so you're casting the stitches off on the same stitch. Yeah, that would have been a purl. That's a purl stitch knitting over the top of. And that's how the cast off is going to look. So that is the neckband finished. And now all we have to do is sew this up and put the buttons on. And when you sew this, with it being the back and the front all in one, you will sew the seam up down the side of the sleeve. That seam on the sleeve first, and then you will turn the sleeve the right way and put it in and do the raglan, but I will show you when I do that. So I have my pin cushion and my needle, and we're going to start with the sleeve. You put the sleeve through onto the wrong side. You pull both your sleeves through the gaps. And then pin them. Now I'm going to thread my needle. And first I'm going to just flat stitch the must stitch part, which is just holding the two pieces together like that and going from one side to the other. Just on the six rows of the must stitch that you did, and then we are going to stitch the side of the sleeve seam with a back stitch, and the back stitch is just going into you're holding the two pieces close together like that, and your stitches come out there, and you're going to go behind that stitch and come out in front of it. Again, behind the stitch to come out in front of it. And that is how you back stitch. You go behind the stitch and come out in front. So I'm going to sew the rest of that seam, and then I'll show you how to set it into the raglans. So that is the sleeve seam done, and when you finish the seam, turn the sleeve the right way round like that. Put it through the hole, the gap where the sleeve goes into on the, like that. And then you find where the seam is, and find the very centre of the stitches that you cast off there, and pin it to where the seam is. So we'll have to put a pin there. And then you work the seam, put the seams together for the raglans. And you will need to thread that And to sew the raglans, you are going to flat stitch it the same as you did with the moss stitch on the sleeve. You just hold the pieces together like that and just pick up stitches on either side. And don't pull your stitches too tight or else you'll gather the seam. Just pull it as much as it takes to pull the seam together. And that's how you flat stitch. If you look on the other side, you see the seam is it's not pulled or gathered, anything like that. So just continue stitching the seams like that, and then do the same with the other sleeve, what I've just showed you, and the seams on the raglan, and then I'll show you when it's completely finished. And this is the completed cardigan and the end of this tutorial. So if you would like to see more anytime, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll show you next tutorial I do.